everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm Jennifer, and today I'm joined by Gary and John, and we're going to be talking about podcasting, specifically podcasting for business. So, first of all, we're gonna kind of go into their backgrounds and talk about what podcasts are and why you might want to start one for your business. So just a little bit about me. I'm actually a podcaster for fun. I host the podcast Sustainably Geeky, and also I'm on several shows under the Epically Geeky channel. But I'm not the expert on podcasting for business. So that's why we brought in Gary and John today. So Gary Emmert is the program director for KNCT Radio, a public radio station broadcasting from the campus of Central Texas College in Killeen. He has an associate's degree in radio and television broadcasting from CTC, a BA in mass communication and media studies from Arizona State University, and is currently pursuing an MS in digital audience strategy from ASU. For a brief time, he had an apprenticeship with Tatiana Moroz, CEO and founder of Crypto Media Hub, and his primary responsibility was to edit and mix her 2 weekly podcasts, The Tatiana Show and Proof of Love. John Vandergriff is the founder of Media to Social, a digital marketing agency that helps small businesses grow on social media platforms. They help create engaging content and retarget customers that watch the content, and have worked with companies like Jack Daniels, BMW, and Joby. He and his business partner have owned the company for 2 years. So, Gary, let's start with you and kind of learn a little more about what you do and your experience in the podcast world.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me today, Jennifer, and it's great to meet you, John. My experience, I retired from the Army in 2013, and I enrolled at the college's radio and television broadcasting program. And the one thing that stood out while I was just a student here was just studying for Max Rudolph and Dan Hull and the other people who came here before me, was the direction that radio was taken, because while the number of listeners that were tuning into radio stations and all that stuff was going down, the one trend that we were seeing was podcasts was going up. So I knew right away that having experience and getting more comfortable and more knowledgeable about podcasts was important. And that's one thing that we were able to do here, because at the radio station, while we do have the bulk of our programming is the easy listening music format, as a public radio station, we're also required to actually provide content that's useful to the community, and we do that through shows that are just kind of spread out throughout the week, such as Syntax Planeteers and On the Dock, and we have a senior report. And we also do something from the USO right here in Fort Hood, and they're usually like 5 minutes to 20 minutes long. And while we would love for our listeners to actually hear that content live while it's broadcasting over 50,000 watts, and stuff on the radio station, that's not practical anymore. And it's become so evident to us that listeners want to listen to content on their own time. And that's where the podcasts come in. So every show that we actually broadcast live on the air, as soon as it's done on the air, we put it into our podcast channel. And it's gotten a huge reception, especially for the important information that we do put out around the community, such as dates of events coming up, stuff like that. So that's how we've gotten into the podcasting at our radio station here at KNCT.
Yeah, and that's awesome that you guys are able to really adapt your model to the new reality, because I think a lot of businesses, organizations, industries in general aren't very good at doing that. So the fact that you guys have embraced this new platform and incorporated it into what you do really says a lot about your operation out there. So John, tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and how I know you've started several podcasts in your company. So tell us all about that.
Yeah, Gary, I need your intro, man. That was good. When she asked for a bio, I need a copy of yours, man. That was good. So we use podcasts a little bit different. Our goal for our company is to come in and help businesses create content for social media platforms. And what we found is you don't want to make a bunch of ads. So a lot of our consumers are making podcasts so they can watch and find out what their business does and talk more about their business. And usually what we do with a podcast is not only do we record it, but then we'll put it on digital and help them grow. We'll help their SEO grow, help them put it on their website. But we'll cut little bitty 1-minute clips out of there, and we'll use that for content on their social media platforms. And so we drive traffic back to their businesses using their podcasts, and they get to talk about it. And once again, they can go. Their customers can go on later and watch that content. So it's not always ad kind of forms coming over on their social media platforms versus information about their business.
Very cool. So before we get too far into this discussion, if you guys have any questions as we're going through, please feel free to add those to the comment section. We will be monitoring that. But let's talk about what a podcast even is, because I think a lot of people hear the word podcast and either have a preconceived notion, or they're like, is it internet radio? Is it just, do I just listen to a station? So let's talk about what a podcast is before we move on.
Gary, you probably got the definition.
Okay. Huh? Yeah, I mean, it's like it's an episode. It's an audio episode of a specific format that's available on demand. Just like, if you watch The Walking Dead or something like that on the the AMC website or their app or whatever, you can basically tune it in on demand, and it's specific. And that's the cool thing about podcasts, I think, is it's specific to whatever the actual person creating the content is wanting to put out there. So you can be as broad as you want, or you can be as specific as you want. You can either talk about football, or you can talk about the long snappers, in football. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's all up to the person who's creating the content.
I think it's really important too that podcast is somewhere that consumers can engage with you more. A lot of times they'll be more reluctant to call in and have a conversation with you or hop on the mic versus getting on a video form or meeting you and you put a camera in their face. So I like podcasts a lot, and what they are for is engaging with their consumer. Can talk.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the relationship that the podcast has to have with social media is so important, because that is the platform that you're going to actually, like John had said in his introduction, that's the platform that you use to draw people to your podcast.
Absolutely. And I know as a consumer of podcasts myself, what I like about them is that I can listen to them when I'm driving, when I'm cleaning the house. I'm not stuck in front of a screen at a certain time, like you said, with a TV show, or even with traditional radio. I don't have to tune in at that exact time. I can listen at all hours of the day, no matter what I'm doing, and I'm learning while I'm doing mundane tasks like driving or whatever. So I think that's a big reason a lot of people have embraced this format as well. So you kind of touched on this, John, but why would a business want to start a podcast? Like, what value is there in it for them?
Well, tons. First of all, it helps drives consumer to know your brand and who you are. I can't tell you, most people want to do business with people they like, they know, and they trust. And a podcast is a great way to build your following versus social media, where you're always kind of brand building. They want to know who you are. And I think podcast is the number way you can do that and relate with your consumer. We run a lot of targeted ads for our business and other businesses to people. And a lot of times we get some data points from the consumer that they have on their podcast. Okay, well, we know their podcasts are getting watched at 7 p.m. to 11 is their highest numbers. So we might run some social media ads around that time because we know their ideal clients coming there. So there's tons of reasons you should start a podcast as a business, but that's only a few. Gary, you got a couple?
Yeah, it's great that you touched on that, because the analytics that you can get from podcasts is similar to, if not exactly the same as you can get from social media, and also from like Google Analytics and other internet-based or search engine optimization tools. You can pinpoint your audience, and like you said, you can figure out whether it be maybe more men listen than women, and then you can figure out how you can cater to that to maybe draw in a wider audience, stuff like that. So it's a great tool that's out there, and more than the unreliable. If you go back to radio and television, you had the Nielsen ratings, so you had this Nielsen family that had a box on their radio and television, and they represented, thousands of people, which really isn't reliable. But that's what determined, how much folks could charge for advertising and everything else like that out there. But with podcasts and with social media and stuff, you can determine your audience. I mean, almost to the person.
Yeah. I think also a good point for businesses of why they should have it is I get back to what they're trying to relay to their consumers. When you make a social media ad, your post, you're kind of super targeted. Hey, would you like to buy our products? With a podcast, we can discuss the products and tell you why it might benefit them. And then what we like to do is pull that one little clip out, that minute of you talking about the product and what it benefits, and use that for post versus an ad. So we're trying to draw traffic for our consumers and our businesses back to their podcast or back to their website using that platform or that kind of strategy.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, you don't see a lot of businesses doing that. So I would think it's a pretty new strategy.
Yeah.
Is that correct? What kinds of topics do some of your clients do their podcasts on? I mean, just to give some examples, and do you have any that do multiple shows to cater to different audiences?
We do. So one example is Vista Real Estate. We change that every week. I'd send the owners in there, and some weeks we talk about 9/11, and some weeks we talk about what's going on in the real estate market. So we change that almost weekly, kind of how they're feeling, what they want to talk about. And we have great retention rate and views off of that.
That's very cool. So we talked about what a podcast is, why a business would want to start a podcast. How does a business go about doing this then? If, let's say, they hear this show and they're inspired to get out there, what's the first step or series of steps they need to take in order to start their own podcast?
So Gary, I think me and you kind of talked about it beforehand. I'm going to let you take the reign on this one and tell them how you would start, and then I'll give my suggestions on some platforms.
Oh, sure. The first thing you'd start with is, of course, the equipment that you're going to use. And if you're just starting ground up, it's not wise to invest a lot of money in equipment that you're only going to use for a limited amount of time. Every laptop that you have comes with a microphone. And as technology has advanced over the years, those microphones have gotten better and stuff. As your podcasts get more popular, whatever, maybe you can get the expensive, nice microphones and stuff like I've got here. But the microphone's a big thing. You can go to Best Buy and you can buy a microphone for $20. You can spend $200. It's up to you. These unidirectional microphones are really good if you're just doing like a one-person podcast or whatever. If you got multiple people, then you want to look at the omnidirectional ones. They actually have microphones where you can switch and stuff. But then, once you get the equipment, then you have to think about the different kind of platforms that you're going to use to actually publish those podcasts that you're putting out there and stuff. And I know, John, you had said that you use Spreaker. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, there's all kinds of different platforms that you can publish your podcast on. You've got Spreaker, you've got Libsyn, you've got Podbean, Simplecast. There's all kinds of different ones out there, and you can just shop those. Just like you would shop for a different cup of coffee or something like that. So, but the equipment is important. But then you also have to look at the audio software that you use. I know Audacity is probably the best software out there that's free. If you want to spend a lot of money on the Creative Cloud stuff, that's cool. I don't.
That's what we use, Adobe. It's not any better. We use Adobe. It's not any better.
No, I recommend to anybody that's just doing this as like a way to promote their business to just use the Audacity software, because it does. It's actually easier, more user friendly than the Adobe Audition stuff out there. It seems like.
Gary, I'm sorry. Is Audacity free for them? I don't remember. We haven't used it in a long time. So there's one Audacity. It's free, guys. You could start there.
Yeah. The Audacity. All you have to do is search it. Yeah. That's what I use for the stuff that I do. Just personally, is the Audacity, and it's like using like a 2.0 version of Audition, which was, in my opinion, the most user friendly version of Audition. So now as it's gotten as Audition has gotten more technical, it's actually gotten more confusing to use. I feel so. I just use the Audacity stuff still to this day, and like you said, it's free.
Yeah, we started a little bit when we first started kind of building podcasts for businesses, and we traveled, so we'd go to their location, so it was a little bit harder than having an in-studio one. We were using it's called a Zoom 6. I think it was like $159 or something like that. It's a recording handheld deal. Just there you go. Is that what you got in your hand?
These are perfect.
Okay. Yeah. So that started out great. We have obviously upgraded to more. We drive a big van now, and so we bought the Roadcaster Pro. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's a built-in mixer.
I have one of those right here.
Okay, yeah. So that one's a little bit more expensive. I think $700. I don't remember before any mics or anything. But it's top of the line, I feel like. But to be honest, if you were a small business, and my recommendation is that phone and a free app to get started. And then if you were looking to upgrade to, I want to spend a little bit on mics, I would go with the Zoom 6 that he had in his hand and buy one or two cheap mics. I think I bought my first mic at a local pawn shop in Killeen, and it was great, right? I didn't have any
podcast. That's a great or pawn shops. That is a great suggestion for people, because I'm sure there's lots of people out there that have tried to start a podcast and given up. And probably the first stop they went to is the pawn shop to get it off their hands, get a little return on investment.
I think a big recommendation, since you just hit on that, is podcast is a slow building platform. I can't tell you. I think we shot, for my first podcast that we were building, I think we shot like 45 episodes before traction started to happen, and so that's one thing I want to recommend to everybody is, remember, this is going to take time, and keep working at it, because you're only going to get better. And practicing that podcast, let's say if you drop one a week or one every 2 weeks, you're getting that speaking habit, and people will eventually start tuning into you. A huge recommendation that we had was, when we first started, we would go interview other businesses. So even though we were promoting for, we'll say Vista is one of our clients, we were interviewing other small businesses to help build our platform and their platform. It was a great way to promote other companies.
Sure, yeah. With small businesses, you have to help each other climb. That's a great tip. And I like what you touched on earlier when you said that don't just talk about whatever it is you're selling in your business. Just like in the introduction that Jennifer had said that I worked for a Tatiana Moroz, her name was. She like developed her own cryptocurrency, and it developed it for artists such as comedians and musicians and stuff like that, so that they could get paid globally and not have to worry about exchange rate stuff like that. They would get paid through cryptocurrency. But at the same time, she had a couple of friends. One of them used to do the books, the audio books and stuff. Her voice was really nice. So they had this like relationship advice podcast that they would do on top of her talking about cryptocurrency and all that other stuff, which is, honestly, it's a pretty dry subject. But when you get to, three people talking about relationship advice, it kind of, adds a little more interest to it and stuff.
I think when you talk about other things like that, you expand the potential market that you have. Everything doesn't have to be about politics or the consumer. Talking about different things allows people to see you in a different way. Well, maybe he's more knowledgeable about how to swing a bat versus how to throw a football, but you still get a touch on both bases. So I think if you were jumping in and starting a podcast, just make sure you're diverse. I mean, obviously have a game plan, but you don't have to only talk about business, and especially if you're starting a business. Like, unfortunately, nobody wants to hear that you know how to fix a car every single time, and that's what you're going to talk about. You're going to lose attention. So talk about different things and be diverse.
And this is, I mean, podcasts essentially are value added content. So, like you said, you're not doing a direct sale. What you're doing is you're giving them things to think about so that when they need that realtor or that mechanic or that whatever, they're going to be like, oh, you know what? I remember hearing this guy on a podcast. Maybe I should go see him. And it's kind of an indirect route to get people to your business without being in your face like, hey, I sell houses, you should use me, etc.
Absolutely. It's like you're calling a friend instead of calling the plumber, you know, or whatever.
I've listened to these guys every month, so.
They know you, they like you, and they trust you. So I love that.
I'm glad you brought up that podcasts are a slow building adventure, because I've been doing my podcast now almost 2 years, and I will attest that, it can be kind of a grind sometimes. I mean, we're not even to 30, almost to 30 episodes, and it's, sometimes it's like, man, when are we gonna, hit that get our big break? But it does take time, and it's still fun. The process is still fun. It's not always about the numbers. It's about what do you learn in the process and the people that you meet. So,
hey, Jennifer, so I have a question for you. So since you have a podcast and you've been building yours, have you registered your podcast as a domain and started building a website out for it to help cross promote?
So we are under another show called Epically Geeky, and that show has a domain, and then we have a page under it. We don't have a specific one for ours, but that's something that we probably should look into doing at some point.
I recommend it. I think a lot of people fall and they don't realize that it is work. So do those little steps of registering it, creating it kind of like a business, because you do need to register to the domain, help with your Google SEO search, and start helping gain traction.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And yeah, like you said, these are things that people don't think of when they out. And we, just to give folks an idea, because right now I know we talked a little bit about how to record a show in person, but since people are social distancing and it's hard sometimes to get people in one place, I will say that we have been using Skype, and we're going to be switching over to Zoom. And there's just so many platforms available now because everybody's been going digital. So, those are some options as well if you're looking at, especially if people are in more than one place.
Yeah, and touching on that, Zoom, I feel, for podcasting is a lot more user-friendly than Skype. And it's built, I think, a lot more for podcasting. And I say that because if, like, we're recording 3 voices right now, and if you do a Zoom recording from an editing standpoint, you can actually edit each individual voice on Zoom, which is something you can't do on other editing or other communication platforms. And I mean, because you might have 2 great connections, but if you have that one bad connection that you have to, spend a little more time in editing with, it's a lot of help, or it's really a lot friendlier and a lot more convenient if you can just focus on that one audio, whatever file that maybe there was a fan in the background that you need to get that out, or car kept honking outside or something like that, and you can focus on just one audio file.
Hey, Gary, let me ask you a question. How many podcasts have you scratched because of bad audio?
Oh, I can't even count.
That's my point. Is I want them to know it's going to happen.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for instance, right now we have a train going by. I keep muting, but the many things that can cause extra noise.
Yeah. And that brings up another interesting point. I know I watched or I listened to a podcast on ESPN. I'm a big sports fan, and they had actually talked to one of the writers from Parks and Recreation and The Office. And the one thing that he brought up more than anything, he's like, the one person that can really either hurt you or help you more than anything else, or kill or just send a show through the roof, is the editor and the editorial stage. There's so many times that you might have that bad audio file that maybe you can resurrect if you got a guy who really knows how to edit things. Or at the same time, if they're terrible editors, they might actually take a good audio file and destroy it, which so editing is almost as important as anything when it comes to podcasts, because you want to have the introduction song, or if you're putting out some advertisements, on the front end or even in the middle or during the actual podcast itself, you got to make sure you have somebody who knows what they're doing with the editing, and that's a really important thing that people don't think about sometimes as well.
Yeah, editing is something I need to improve on myself. So.
Garrett, two things. For editing, Benjamin, my business partner, he was an editor on The Office for 3 years, so we know about some of their scrapped episodes. But one thing I think that that people don't realize is the data that you do collect off of your 5 episodes. Is pay attention to that. Most people don't pay attention to their data at all, but their analytics is important. After you have 5-10 episodes, see who's watching. If it's girls, maybe you want to pivot and discuss more to, even though you're a man, maybe you want to talk more to girls if you're trying to grow your show. If you're not trying to grow it, then you don't check the data, but you have to measure and track what's going on to pivot and move and help grow your channel. So that's one thing I want to tell people to pay attention to, is the data that comes across.
And so those platforms you discussed earlier, do they give you that data? The ones that you use to send out the shows for folks that are wanting to track that?
Yeah, for us, it's down to the IP address. They'll send us that information. It's so it's like social media with Facebook. And if you look at the data that comes from social media, with our radio station, we have a Twitter page and we have a Facebook page. And the one thing you have to look at, on our Twitter page, most of our followers are men. But on our Facebook page, most of our followers are women. So you kind of cater your message based on the platform that you're going out and pushing out there too. So, the post might be totally different on one platform than it is on the other as well.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, the answer to that question is yes, they do.
Okay. Yeah. Great. We do have a couple questions coming in. So Crystal asks, what platform is everybody moving to? And I'm going back to, I think, the question or the discussion about the different, channels you use to send it out there. Is there a specific one? Or maybe she might also be referring to where people listen. So if you guys have any insight on either of those.
I don't have an insight on where people listen. I will say, for me and my businesses that we run, Facebook is the easiest platform to cross promote onto. To push them to the podcast. So I personally like Facebook, but everybody has their own preference.
I agree with that. And Facebook, if we're talking about local small businesses, Facebook is the best platform, because you can it feels more local, as opposed to Twitter and Instagram. It's mostly people are just following athletes or celebrities on those sites, and you don't get as much feedback or back and forth from people who are in your area, which is what you need, if you're running a business and you want to actually push products.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say just put your show out there on any place that takes podcasts, right? Like iTunes, Pandora, Stitcher, all the different platforms that way.
If they'll let you on, I can't tell you how many times we've submitted to iTunes and it's been kicked back, or iHeart. They're just, sometimes they're finicky. Sometimes it works perfect. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. I know iTunes is very picky. Going through a platform such as Libsyn or Spreaker helps you get in the door sometimes. They're like a trusted source, I guess. It's like having someone get you into the club,
Yeah, that's a
I'm
good
on
point.
the list. Sarah asks, approximately how much time do you spend on tasks related to podcast management? That's a good question.
That's a great question. I know from the editorial standpoint, you should probably spend twice as much time editing as the actual length of the podcast. So you just got to make sure you got to talk to the different hosts or guests and because some of them say a lot, like me, or other bad habits that are out there that you want to filter out and stuff, so it doesn't turn off the listener.
I'm gonna agree with Gary. We luckily have a team of in-house editors here. This is what we do, is produce content. So we have it streamlined, but I would say double whatever time you shoot. So if you film or you shot for an hour, it's gonna take probably 2 hours on management and editing. I can't harp enough on cross promoting, meaning pull that little clip or pull a couple clips and put them on different platforms and drive the traffic yourself, because even if you boosted an ad and Facebook or Instagram's algorithm doesn't like it, well, they're not going to show your podcast to people. So just make sure that you cross promote is my biggest takeaway on that question.
Great. If you guys have any other questions, go ahead and get them up for us now. I think we mostly covered everything that we were going to. We talked about how businesses can promote their podcast. Do you have any resources or any podcasts that you would point people to learn more about this?
I'm a fan of The Real AF. He's one of my mentors. It's Andy Frisella. It's a kind of business marketing self-help podcast. That's my favorite. And then I like there's some social media ones that I can't think of off the top of my head, but those are my suggestions.
Okay,
that's great. The one that I deal with that I like to go to a lot is there's actually a meetup in Austin of just podcasters, and you can pick their brain a lot. And they also actually have they did before the pandemic hit us all, but they actually have like monthly meetings where you can actually go to a coffee shop or something like that in Austin and just sit down and just pick the brains of everybody else in there, get best practices, stuff like that that's out there. So it's like an Austin podcasters Facebook.
Cool. I found that podcasters are generally very generous. It's not a super competitive. I mean, when you're kind of doing a home-based thing anyways, people are normally happy to help answer questions, and we all, just want to get our ideas out there. And that's the beauty of this, is that anybody can start a podcast, and it's just
anybody
to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Gary, I think you wanted to show off your cool studio there before we head off here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again for having me, Jennifer and John. I definitely want to get your business card.
Absolutely.
I think, but here at Central Texas College, in the studios of KNCT, where I'm sitting at right now, it used to be a digital media storage area, which, back in the day, they kept everything on VHS tapes and beta and the reel-to-reels. And it was basically the entire room was like wall-to-wall shelves, right? Just like those shelves that are back there. That's how the whole room was, okay? And they had wires and stuff like that everywhere. But since we don't use that anymore, and since we don't have a television station anymore, it's just a radio station, we decided to turn this room into a digital media storage place. But we've done it so that students can actually come to our building 109, and record their own podcast if they want. And like John was talking about earlier, we've got the Roadcast, and we've got all the different stuff. And actually, we have the one last shelf we've turned into like a museum exhibit shelf. So all the different microphones and everything else that we've used from the past. Like this is the old KNCT television microphone.
Does that thing still work?
Yes. Yeah, we were. It tells you how frugal. It tells you how frugal public radios and stuff. In our main studio, we've actually got a rotary telephone that people can call to the station and use, and it still works. So we're making the most out of the donations or the money that our listeners send to us, as a public radio station and stuff. But yeah, these microphones also work. Go ahead.
I said some of that equipment was made to last, man. I've seen some of that stuff there that you guys use, and it's still going. Like it's
great. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Our console in the other room, I think it's 30 years old. It's been around almost as long as the station itself, which has been around for 50 years. But yeah, it's built to last. There's actually wood paneling on the sides of it and stuff. It's really sleek. It looks good.
Yeah. So students that want to use your studio, you said, can come in and do that, or how do they sign up for that? Do they have to be part of the program?
It's not that busy right now, so they can just walk in. The doors are actually sealed from the outside, so you just have to ring the doorbell. So each one of the entrances to Building 109, whether you're coming from the gazebo or the parking lot by the Anderson Center, just ring the doorbell. We'll let you in. Down to we'll show you how to use all the equipment here.
Can I come shoot a podcast with you, Gary?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are always welcome to come in. I know Jennifer was a former student, so yeah, you were all welcome to come and enjoy all the stuff that we've got here now. Yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait to see what you guys produce together. I can already see the wheels turning. Is there anything else you guys would add that we didn't cover relating to podcasts or just, media in general for businesses?
Oh, I have tons for media. I just remember treat it like it's work. It's fun. I enjoy it. We love getting our clients to do it. I think they have fun with it. I can't tell you how many jokes or laughs we'll have behind the scenes, and it's fun, but don't forget that it's work, and it's very crucial to your business. I think it can help expedite and grow your business faster than you realize. So please start. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Gary's with me. You can feel free to message us, ask us. I would give you any information or help you out in any way I could. But just start. That's the most important. It's not going to get better in 3 months. It's not going to get better in a year. Just start recording.
Absolutely. Yeah. You might catch lightning in a bottle, so who knows?
Well, I know we've linked to your pages and your websites in our comments, but you guys want to share real quick where folks can find you or your organization online and how they can get in touch with you?
Go ahead, Gary. I'll let you go.
Thank you, John. You can find us on the web, KNCT.org. That's our call signs, our call letters for our station. We're on Facebook, Twitter. All of them are KNCT. Just search KNCT Simply Beautiful. That's the motto of our radio station. Also, we've got our radio station is available on the streaming websites, which you can get all the links from the websites, but you can also download us on your phone and listen to the Simply Beautiful music on your phone, and also the podcasts are also available on your phone.
Awesome. John,
so mine's pretty easy. If you're looking to grow or help with any of your digital needs, check us out at media2social.com. You can add me on Facebook, John Vandergriff. I think it's right up over there. Yeah, I'm on all the platforms. Anything I can do to help, feel free to message me.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for being on. I know I learned a lot, and hopefully we've inspired some local businesses or people to start their own podcast. And let us know if you do decide to. We'd love to hear about what you were inspired to do. So maybe you've already had the idea, and this gives you some a boost. So thanks guys for being on, and thank you for listening, folks.
Thank you guys.